Hey guys, I was thinking what would be a good video to put out to ruin everyone's Christmas, and I figured I would do a character tier list. I'm just kidding, of course, but let's still start off with something that I know will piss off most of the player base, and that is my ranking for Etsio. I will put him straight into the F tier, and honestly he can be lucky that he even makes it on this list. Let me briefly explain to you why that is. Where do you play this guy in version 3.3? The tier list is gonna be about version 3.3, by the way. The answer is nowhere. He doesn't have a place in this game. Do you play him in Ultimate? No, you do this with Recoleta. Do you play him in Follow-Up? No, you do this with Anion Hala. Do you play him in Poison? No, Poison is not viable. Where would you ever play Ezio? Nowhere, and that's why he belongs into the F tier. The reason why he's even on this list is because of his individual prowess. And then we can move on to the next part, and from now on we're gonna rank entire teams, because that makes it much faster and much more convenient for me. And yeah, there are a lot of different characters in this game, so I don't want this video to be 3 hours long either. Alright, then the rank up team is, in terms of a team tier list, at like rank 5, rank 6, depending on how you want to look at things. So this team, of course, no member of it will reach like the S or A plus rank even. Not even the A rank, spoiler alert, because these rankings are reserved for the very best teams in the entire game. So the best characters from the rank up team belong into the B tier, logically speaking. And the core is of course the character Marcus and Via. Those two characters is or are what the whole team is built around, in fact. Now I will put Hisabeth among these two as well, because Hisabeth is, in my opinion, also a core part of this team. She elevates this team to a whole new level, and the team is with Hisabeth way better than without her. So there we go. That leads to Mercuria and Argus being fill-ins. You can choose whoever you want. Both of them in version 3.3 received their Euphoria, and they are both quite respectable characters, but not quite on the level of the rest of the team, and therefore they have to be ranked a tier lower, right? Logically speaking. There we go. You play Marcus, Via and Hisabeth, and then you slot in either Marcus or Mercuria. Yeah, depending on who you like more, who do you think is better, who do you have, who you don't have, right? And that's it about that. Next up, let's talk about the Afterglow team, and here we have a whole bunch to unpack. Let's start off by talking a little bit about the character Beryl. She's gonna be released in version 3.2. She's gonna be a limited character, and as an individual character she is extremely underwhelming, to say the least. That is mainly because of the fact that her true potential is only unlocked if you go all the way to portray number 5. Considering the archetype she is from, considering that you also need Isolde at your disposal. In the very next version you will then have to pull for the character Marsha. That she's a limited and she needs P5, right? All of this being said, you are aware that this is a very heavy task to ask for. Most people are simply not gonna accomplish that whatsoever. But still, even with all of this information out of the way, the Afterglow archetype is quite respectable. Beryl is gonna be introduced with a new archetype, and this archetype truly comes online, so to speak, in version 3.3 with the release of Marsha. A higher ranking than A will not be possible though. I will immediately put Isolde also in the A tier, because these two, they go hand in hand and they will have to be played together. Now Marsha is a little bit better when it comes to individual prowess compared to Isolde and Beryl, because mainly in the role that Marsha performs into, she performs much better than the other two. Marsha is, when it comes to power level, almost the same power level as Kiparina. These two are very, very close. They are pretty much the exact same character, just Marsha performs around her team applying burn, and she fills this Afterglow meter, while Kiparina does the exact same thing but for the Impromptu archetype. And she needs her teammates to consume a lot of Eureka so that Kiparina can accumulate a lot of inspiration, which obviously helps the Impromptu archetype and synergizes perfectly well with characters like Baccarola and Voyager. I think everyone knows how this goes by now. And therefore, these two characters, spoiler alert, they will receive the exact same ranking. Marsha is in fact a little bit worse of a character than Kiparina, but I would not justify this as a whole tier difference. But there we go. Now we have the last character from the quote-unquote Afterglow archetype left, which is Flutterpage. Flutterpage is of course a follow-up character and not an Afterglow character, but she will be the best in slot and therefore be played in the Afterglow archetype in version 3.3, which this tier list is all about. And Flutterpage joins of course the A rank. In my previous tier list video I mentioned the fact that Flutterpage lost a lot of her viability and she is very overrated and not as good as people think anymore, and I put her a little bit lower in terms of rankings. But now that she came back, not only through the viability of being played together with Anionala and Calabauna, but also for multiple versions in the Afterglow archetype, that nets Flutterpage a little bit of a higher ranking compared to my previous tier list. I mentioned Kiparina, so why not talk about her entire team, the Impromptu lineup. I already mentioned that Marsha and Kiparina are about the same power level. Kiparina is a little bit better than Marsha, mainly because she belongs to the better archetype. And here I have to make a little bit of a disclaimer. Here you can see that I put Fatutu and Kiparina into the same tier, which is the S tier. Now, if you look at my tier list right now in version 3.3, how come Kiparina is no longer in the S tier, but Fatutu, spoiler alert, will still keep the S tier? That is very, very simple. In my previous tier list, when I made it for version 3.1, Fatutu's team, the team that Fatutu was part of, was not doing so hot. Now Fatutu is a much better individual character compared to Kiparina. The only reason why I gave Kiparina the same credit as Fatutu is because Kiparina has a very strong team and is part of the best, of the third best team in the entire team, which is Impromptu, while Fatutu on the other hand didn't have a team that performed so hot. Now this changed. Now Fatutu got a new team together with Calabauna or Brumé, however you want to look at it, and Anionala. That gives a whole bunch of new viability to the character Fatutu, and since she is way better individually than Kiparina falls down a rank because I cannot justify putting Fatutu and Kiparina into the same tier anymore because of those reasons. I forgot to put Annalie into this roster. I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter. Here she is now. Okay, we just talked about the Kiparina and Fatutu scenario. Okay, now Kiparina is of course by far the best individual character in this Impromptu lineup, so that leads to her teammates having to be a rank below Kiparina. Needless to explain. And the two characters that accomplish that are of course the main DPS for the Impromptu lineup with Baccarola and the character LF, because it's kind of the same scenario as with Hithabef and the rank up team, that if you play the Impromptu lineup with Aleph, he elevates this team to very new heights, and the team is way better with Aleph compared to without Aleph. That's why he deserves a lot of credit. The same credit, in fact, as the actual main DPS of the team. Okay, then the rest of the team is worse. We have Regulus and Voyager as the sub DPS for the team. Now, these two characters, they are about on the same level. Regulus is a little bit better, but I cannot justify putting Voyager a tier below Regulus because they are about the same. And there is a kicker now, because these two, they even lose a little bit of value now, because they are both replaceable. They not just replace each other, but there is a new challenger that challenges them for a spot, and that is Anan Lee. Now, we don't know exactly how good Anan Lee will be with her new Euphoria, but we can look at her Euphoria, and it is extremely underwhelming. She will, like, what this boils down to is that Anan Lee will accumulate more inspiration compared to what Voyager and Regulus accumulate, but you lose this very important part of being able to focus your impromptu incantations onto the target that you actually want. Otherwise, without Regulus and Voyager's ability to do that, the impromptu incantations, they hit their damage randomly, as you know. And I would value this specific mechanic way higher than just accumulating more inspiration that then would lead to this damage being randomly distributed, right? But I see a lot of people putting a lot of emphasis on this Wailing Whirl, the new content that dropped in the current version that we are in. I think it's version 3.1. Yeah, it actually is. And if you are someone like that puts a whole bunch of emphasis onto this very specific content, then you would actually be better off with Anan Lee. And you then would rank Anan Lee into the B tier and move Regulus and Voyager down. I do not put a lot of emphasis onto this Wailing Whirl. I consider it completely useless because there are zero rewards, there's nothing to gain there, and therefore why put a lot of emphasis on it. And that's what makes Regulus and Voyager more valuable, and that's why I ranked them exactly like I did. Alright, let's talk about the Dynamo archetype next, cause why not? Of course, we have absolute powerhouse characters that are completely busted in this team. We have Lucy, of course, is the second best main DPS character in the entire game. I don't think I need to explain to you why Ulrich is here. That is one of the best, if not the best sub DPS in the entire game. I would even say he is the best sub DPS in the entire game. And therefore, of course, he has to be S tier. Those are irreplaceable powerhouse characters in the second best team in the entire game. Same, of course, goes for Sharon. You can even go as far and say you shouldn't play Dynamo if you don't have Sharon. That's how good he is. Let that sink in, right? You shouldn't play the second best team in the game at all if you don't have Sharon. I mean, if that doesn't net you the S tier spot, I don't know whatever would do that. Okay, then we have the sustain character for the Dynamo archetype team, and here again another argument for Sharon, because normally we would have to use Ezra as our sustain in the Dynamo archetype team, because it's the only sustain in the entire game that accumulates dynamos, and that is what the Dynamo team is all about, you know what I mean? Needless to explain. But Sharon gets the job done so phenomenally that Ezra all of a sudden is not even truly the best in slot there anymore, and is replaceable with a lot of other things, you know what I mean? And not only that, Ezra is also heavily outperformed in his own role. He, from all the meta sustain characters, Ezra is probably gonna be the worst there. So he has to receive a very, very low ranking. The fact he is not F or anything like that is because he is still from this Dynamo archetype team, and he is still the only sustained character in the game that accumulates these dynamos. So that is pretty respectable still, and therefore I will put him in the D tier. Now we have, two, let me say, quite interesting characters left with Corvis and Brumé. Let's talk about the disaster that is Brumé first. We have this scenario again that we already had with Eternity's Euphoria number 2 and with Etsio, that complete degenerates that don't understand the game spread the misinformation that Brumé is so overpowered that she outclasses a character like Nautica. This could of course not be further from the truth. I was proven correct in my statements about Eternity Euphoria number 2 and about Etsio, and I will be proven right one more time with Brumé. Don't listen to these brain rot morons that try to tell you some absolute dog shit. That is the message that I want to get across when it comes to the character Brumé. Now, let's talk about Brumé in general and what is actually going on with the character. She is released at a very unfortunate point in time, first of all, because what is going on in the game right now and in the very near future is we have this Christmas banner we pulled for Robushka, we will have a Aleph and a Kiparina banner coming up. We then have to pull for Beryl before Brumé releases. Brumé belongs to an archetype that is already completely over the top busted and complete. We have Lucy, Ulrich, Sharon, we have Ezra, and a lot of other sustains, like for example Kiparina, that can be put into this team. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever, no matter how you look at it, to ever pull for the character Brumé. Now, you can make this argument of, oh, it is actually quite decent to bind Anionala to Brumé. That is true, but it is also very, very good to bind Kalabauna, which is part of the Euphoria banner. Or you could already have Kalabauna at your disposal, and that is very, very solid as well. So there is no need to pull for Brumé, especially not after everything that I just counted out. And we have a limited character that needs Portrait 5 or should have P5 right before Brumé releases. So if you have any clue, like even the slightest clue, when it comes to how to manage your resources, mainly your Unilogs, then Brumé turns into an absolute must-skip character. Now, that would of course immediately net her the F tier, right? But she has this little niche that you can bind her to Anyo, as I mentioned, and her individual prowess is also quite respectable. Problem is, again, she doesn't have a place in this game really. She is giga replaceable, she spawns, she releases at a very unfortunate point in time, and therefore most of the player base, if not even every single one, should just skip Brumé. Now, that is the reason that I put her into C tier. The only reason why she's not lower is because of her before mentioned individual prowess and a little bit of a tiny niche that she has in this game. Then next up we have to talk a little bit about the character Corvis as well, and Corvis is an even bigger disaster than Brumé is. Her individual prowess is not on that level. She also belongs into this Dynamo archetype team. She releases like after Robushka. We have, again, everything that I mentioned with Brumé is also true for Corvis, just that Corvis is a much worse version of Brumé, doesn't have a spot in this game, is completely outclassed and should be skipped by every single player on the planet. And therefore I would even go as far and put her 2 tiers below Brumé, and that nets her the F tier. There is no scenario where you could make Corvis work other than you being a brand new player. And even then, if you are a brand new player, you still need Sharon in order to play Corvis, and you would still be better off just saving for Brumé. So there you go. That's the scenario when it comes to Corvis. Let's go over the ultimate archetype team now. Now this team is gonna be around the same power level as the Afterglow team. That means the team belongs into the A rank. The best characters of the ultimate archetype team are of course Recoleta, that is by far the best main DPS character in the game for the ultimate archetype team. Then we all are aware of how important and how unplayable the ultimate archetype team would become if it wouldn't be for Melania. The whole archetype only can exist because Melania exists. Without Melania, this archetype would be completely flushed down the drain. It is the exact same scenario as it was back then with Poison and Tuesday. So Recoleta and Melania, they both belong into the A tier. Now Centurion has to be ranked a rank lower compared to Recoleta, of course. Centurion is very respectable, but unfortunately not quite the best in slot there. So a rank 1 tier below Recoleta is perfectly fair. A-Knight has only a very tiny niche in this game. I explained multiple times what that niche is, and otherwise he's unfortunately unplayable. I like the guy, but I mean, it is what it is. I cannot let any bias come into play when I rank these characters. And yeah, the matter of fact is that A-Knight is just complete garbage. The little tiny niche that he has saves him and makes it so that he actually makes the list. Then we have a character like Getian, who's also very important for this team. He is the best in slot. He has not quite the importance of Recoleta and Melania though, so a team below these two, a tier below these two, is the most fair placement I could possibly give him. Then Robushka is a little bit of an interesting story. Yeah, she is the best in slot for the Blood Tide team technically, but her true best in slot is in his ultimate archetype team together with Recoleta, Melania and Getian, and she also performs quite well in her own role, which is a healer aka a sustain character. Only Fatutu, Marsha and Kiparina are better. They already received their ranking, so Robushka has to receive a ranking below these three. That's gonna be the A tier. That's perfect because she belongs to the ultimate archetype, and that is a A tier placement. Alright. Then we have another very unfortunate thing here with Muldir, and this is gonna be, yeah, it's really hard to rank her actually. Now she is at least a substitute. She can replace Getian in the ultimate archetype team. That gives her, in my opinion, a little bit more viability than the entirety of the F tier. The F tier is very close to be completely unplayable. Now Muldir's damage numbers and her overall value is also pretty much non-existent. Her supportive capabilities, right? They take way too long to stack up and come into effect, and then her damage output is extremely pathetic. So yeah, I'm sorry, like I try to give you the D tier Muldir, but I can just not justify it if we think about it a little bit. And this is going to be my placement for the characters that belong into the ultimate archetype. Before we jump into the Blood Tide team and rank that one, I want to talk about some more characters here. Let's start off with Kakania and Sotheby, for example. I will put both of these characters into the actual D tier. It is because, yeah, they, just like the F tier, they also don't really have a place in this game that would be viable. Sure, Sotheby has her place in the poison team, but poison is ass, so that doesn't really count, right? But Kakania and Sotheby, they pop up here and there, they see play, and they show that they are not completely 100% irrelevant, no matter what content we are talking about. The F tier is completely irrelevant and never does see any play that would be like serious. You know what I mean? So that's why I put Kakania and Sotheby both into the D tier. I want to mention something about GU here as well. She fell off a cliff. You can say she's unplayable. I wouldn't blame you for doing it, but she is individual. From her individual prowess, actually not too bad. She's a better individual character than the rest of the F tier. The problem is, like, she's completely outclassed and she also doesn't have her team. The only thing that makes this list is that you could, if you wanted to, replace Kalabauna with Geo and play her with Anionala instead of Kala. That is what makes Geo still make this list. Cool. Then we have Anionala. That is of course going to be the star with her Euphoria update when it comes to the follow-up team. She kind of rebuilds this team. It's going to be Faltutu and Flutterpage, of course. And then you play Anionala and you will most of the times bind Kalabauna to her, but you could also do this with Brumé. Yeah, the follow-up team now in terms of power level is also, it's going to be almost the same as Afterglow and Ultimate, right? I need to wait a little bit to see how the power scaling there actually works out, but yeah, they gonna be all around like the same power level, and therefore I will net Anionala the same ranking as I would give to a Recoleta, a Barcelona or a Beryl. Cool. Then we have Anionala. Now, technically speaking, she would deserve a B ranking right below Anio. I cannot give her that though, because when you look at Kalabauna as an individual character, which this is a tier list, right, about individual characters, this is not a team tier list, and if you look at Kalabauna individually, she is still unfortunately quite pathetic. She's worse than like an Argus or a Brumé or something like that if we talk about individual prowess. Now she belongs, see, and the next point we would have to look at, does she belong to a better team than Argus? Yeah, it's a little bit of a better team, but not by much. Then the same goes for Mercurio, of course. Anali belongs to a better team, and Brumé belongs to the same team. You know what I mean? And yeah, it is really, here comes really into play how important it is to stand your ground individually. And Kalabauna just unfortunately doesn't hold up to that. She's the best character in the D tier, but she doesn't quite make it into the C tier. That would be a character that would be like C- or D+ or something like that. But you know, yeah, let's not get too crazy, and therefore put Kalabauna into the D tier. Alright, and now it's finally time to rank the Blood Tide team. The most obvious thing out of the way first, Nautica is by far the best character in the entire game. She outclasses everyone else so hardcore that she, like I'm telling you, she will be one of the best characters, if not even the best character for the entire year until we head into the 3rd anniversary. If anything would come up that would like truly outclass Nautica, it is unimaginable. It is impossible. She's so far beyond everyone else. It's not even funny. I can't even describe that in words, how absolutely incredibly broken and what kind of free win this character is. It is ridiculous. You probably know that, but yeah, maybe not, because you think Brumé is better or something, right? There are crazy people out there. So yeah, anyways, I'm telling you, Nautica is, it's not, no one comes remotely close to that character. Okay, then next up, let's talk about Sentinel. Best in slot in the best team in the game. So not quite as of importance as like a Nautica or, spoiler alert, a Semmelweis, but still, right? Best in slot in the best team in the entire game is respectable. The reason she's not S is because a Nautica is there, and even a Semmelweis is more important for the Bloodtide team than a Sentinel would be. Nautica and Semmelweis, as well as all the other characters in the S tier, they are 100% irreplaceable. Like, you cannot replace these characters in their respective teams. Sentinel you can replace with Eternity. She's not that important. Alright, then yeah, let's rank Eternity. Most of the player base does, or at least should, play the Bloodtide team in fact with Eternity, even though she's outclassed by Sentinel, but Sentinel was a really easy skip. She's not needed, and you had to pull for Sharon. Maybe you want to pull for Robushka after Sharon, right? So Sentinel, not that much of a giga value. That's why Eternity is of course on this list. Now, individual prowess is the problem, and the fact she is replaceable. She is very strongly outclassed by Sentinel. I cannot give her a higher rank than that D for that reason, right? But she's not F, she is part of the Bloodtide. Most people play her in the Bloodtide team because they skipped Sentinel, right? That is respectable, but individually Eternity is not that sick anymore, and that's why she is so low, right? I think that makes perfect sense. Cool. Then next up we have Medicine Pocket. Now again, individually in his role is doing not so hot. He's outclassed by Robushka. Even individually speaking, he is a worse sustained character than Via would be, and he is better than Ezra though, so that would put him into the C tier. I will go and put him a tier higher than that, right? One tier under Robushka I think is the perfect place, because again, yeah, he is outclassed by Robushka in his spot, but most people play Medicine Pocket, should play Medicine Pocket in the Bloodtide team, and Robushka belongs to the Ultimate Archetype team. For that fact, for most players, Medicine Pocket is in fact the best in slot healer. That is what everyone uses in the Bloodtide team, and that's why he is B and not C. There we go. That was my tier list for version 3.3, guys. And even though you probably hate my guts right now for ranking a character that you love too low, it's fine. I still wish all of you Merry Christmas, and I want to let you know that I do not take it for granted that all of you stick around with me and watch my videos. Sometimes it might not sound like that because I do talk a lot of shit, I do a lot of rants, but you know how this goes by now. This is just my passion for the game speaking and me wanting this game to be the best it could possibly be. But trust me, I really do appreciate all of you very much. So again, thank you so much for being here with me and making all of this content creation that I, by the way, do completely for free. I'm not monetized or anything like that. More fun. Thank you very much. But that's it for the video, guys. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Merry Christmas. And we love this game.